Live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Hump Day Wednesday edition of Game Night, the final day of the month of May. I am Josh Hennig, hanging out with you for the Power Hour known as Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We are a day away from the start of the NBA Finals. Sixers have their new head coach, and Phillies lose a game they should have and could have won last night. We'll get to all that and more this hour. As always, you can join the conversation. 609-403-0973 is the text board. You can also DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. It's Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg will join us coming up in less than 20 minutes from now. We will get to the Phillies during this hour, but I want to first start with some of the Sixers because I was watching Get Up this morning, and there were a couple of things said on Get Up this morning that really stood out to me. And listen, I am not an NBA insider. I am not some sort of prognosticator. I'm just somebody who tries to gather as much information as possible and present it to all of you out there listening on 97.3 ESPN. In some ways, I am an aggregator and a funnel of information. And when Brian Windhorst said this morning, this was the ultimate moment that I realized that it is so obvious that Nick Nurse was not hired because of James Harden. This was the audio. This was the moment. I think it was like 9:45 this morning, whatever it was, that I understood that this entire offseason is about Daryl Morey trying to put his imprint on the team, and that whether Harden has something to do with this team moving forward is not his concern. This morning, Brian Windhorst on Get Up set the groundwork for what has been churning in my head all day long.
I don't think anybody should make assumptions about Harden. I don't think anybody should assume that just because Nick Nurse is hired that he is gone. I don't think anybody should assume that he's going to Houston. I think basically we have a history here where James Harden has been willing to work with Daryl Morey. He's been willing to trust Daryl Morey, and this hire would be trusting Daryl Morey. So Houston, Harden is a big question mark, but really keep an open mind is what I think the league is doing, and I would advise 76ers fans absolutely to do as well.
Don't assume anything with Harper. Notice how he didn't say that Daryl Morey was doing things for James Harden. He said that Harden has a history of trusting Daryl Morey. It's starting to look more and more like this organization is choosing Joel Embiid and is not choosing anyone else. I don't think it is a coincidence that this topic came out today, because we are basically 30 days away from the start of NBA free agency. And the pressure is on already to force Harden to make a decision. What is actually important to him? What is actually important to Harden? Because if winning is important to Harden, then you stay with the Sixers and you modify your game and you help the team become better. But if winning a championship is not as important to you as other things, we'll refer to it as other stuff, other lifestyle activities are more important to you than winning a championship, then we know what Harden's going to do. Because when I talk to people about these different conversations, nobody I have heard really wants Harden back. The majority of fans don't want him here because they look at Harden in the same way that former players look at Harden as well. And whether it is reality or not, the truth is perception becomes reality. And the perception becoming reality for Harden is he is perceived as a loser. He is perceived as someone who doesn't want it bad enough to win a championship. I was talking about this with Mike Gill earlier on the Sports Bash today on 97.3 ESPN in the 4 o'clock hour. The reason why a person like a Charles Barkley or Shaquille O'Neal will criticize players in the same vibe and energy that fans will is because the former player sees the same thing as the fan. The player and the fan are perceiving the same issue. That there are players in this league of the NBA, like James Harden, like Jaylen Brown, and others who are incapable of making in-game adjustments. They are incapable of adjusting their focus, recognizing what the defense says. They are incapable of making the pivot to say, I'm not making my threes. I'm not making shots. This style of play that I'm doing at this moment in time is not working for my team. I have to adjust. I have to do something different. Because the problem is that when you're in the moment, the great players, the winning players make those adjustments. Jordan didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to pass the ball to Steve Kerr and John Paxson and see what happens. Yeah, that's not what happened at all. When Shaq and Kobe were dumping the ball off to Derek Fisher and to Robert Horry, they didn't wake up one day and say, you know what would be a fun idea? Let's pass the ball to Robert Horry and call him Big Shot Bob. Hey, I'm going to pass the ball to Derek Fisher today. Wouldn't that be a fun idea? Of course, that's not how they think. In the flow of the game, they realize that the team is hyper-focusing on them, and they have an open teammate who can make a shot. Phil Jackson has said in the past that one of the most important things that he had to learn how to do as a coach was to help his star players understand that you can trust your teammates. And for a guy in James Harden who gave a Rolex watch to Joel Embiid for winning the MVP, but then when push comes to shove, can't give the MVP the ball for 4 minutes in Game 6 of the Eastern Conference second round of the postseason, it feels pretty hollow when you say, oh, we got to be better, we got to do better. Now, speaking of the coaching situation, Monica McNutt made a great point this morning on Get Up that I thought was interesting. Take a listen.
If you really subscribe to the idea that Doc was the reason that they didn't close out Game 6 and look terrible in Game 7, which I personally don't, then so you allegedly have fixed your problem now.
Right.
And so I think one thing I will say in this conversation, and James Harden said this to me after Game 1 versus Brooklyn, and he just said it matter-of-factly, and I think it's true, and sometimes we forget. He's been really good for a really long time, and I don't know if he gets the credit for the way that he shifted his game to make it work with Joel Embiid. Perhaps there is a middle ground in terms of allowing him to be more of the scorer that we saw at points in the playoff run and the facilitator that would be more appeasing to him. I have a hard time believing that it's truly about just money and luxury. I do think that he wants to win at a high level. And so I think Wendy made the best point of the morning in terms of his trust in Daryl Morey. But to your question, they were close. They were the closest that they have been in at least 3 years as far as this team that was expected to get over the hump. If you think that Nick Nurse is going to solve all the problems, then yes, they've had.
So then the question is, do we really believe that Doc Rivers was the reason why they lost games 6 and 7? And you guys can tell me at 609-403-0973. Because to me, there's two sides of this coin. Because as you listen to us on 973 ESPN FM, when you flip on the 973 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle, and you DM us through the app, you send us text on the text board, I haven't heard from a lot of people who didn't blame James Harden for them losing. So if there's not this group of people who are saying it's all Doc Rivers' fault and none of the blame goes to James Harden, then that'd be different. And that's why what Monica McNutt said on Get Up this morning is interesting, because she's saying, look, if the problem was just the coach, then yes, hiring Nick Nurse solves all your problems. But hiring the coach doesn't solve the problems of Game 6 and Game 7 losses. And as we saw with the Boston Celtics in their eventual loss to the Miami Heat, when your star players don't do their job, when they don't show up, when they don't execute, and this goes beyond a bad day at the office, a bad shooting night, not struggling from the field, okay? There's a huge difference between that and being so stubborn and obstinate that you are incapable of the flexibility to go out onto the court and say, hey, I'm 1 for 8 from 3, or I'm 4 for 12 shooting. Maybe if I do something else, my team has a chance to win this game. And that, for me, is what I personally don't comprehend with James Harden. So when Brian Windhorst says, don't assume anything about Harden's future, what he's saying is that nobody really knows what Harden wants, because the problem is, I don't think Harden knows what Harden wants. And if Harden really trusts Daryl Morey as much as everyone says that he does, then maybe the problem with Harden is that he's hearing and not listening. And it comes down to him. It doesn't matter if the head coach is Doc Rivers, Nick Nurse, Mike D'Antoni, Steve Nash. It doesn't matter who the head coach is. What matters is, what are you doing with the information being given to you? You know, there's all these stories about how Sam Cassell has been in James Harden's ear all year. Well, there's one thing to be in somebody's ear. Was he actually listening? Dan EHT chimes in at 609-403-0973. He says, just like LeBron in Cleveland, just give us one. Embiid. Iverson was really close, but ran into two all-time greats, Shaq and Kobe. I hear you, Dan EHT, but Embiid can't do him by himself. You know, Shaq and Kobe, they got to the next level because when Phil Jackson was hired by the Lakers, they had been losing in the postseason with Del Harris. And Shaquille O'Neal was not initially on board with Phil Jackson being the head coach. Phil had him come out to his ranch, and he sat Shaquille O'Neal down. They talked about different things. And he told Shaq, just give me all you got. Buy in. Come in your best shape. I will make you an MVP. I will make you a champion, but you got to let me get you there. And he got Shaq to buy into his system. and Shaq chose to listen to Phil Jackson. And instead of being a loser, Shaquille O'Neal became a winner. So on one hand, it's on Embiid, but on the flip side of the other thing Phil Jackson did, he got Kobe to buy in the idea that Shaq needs the ball on the post. You got to pass it to Derek Fisher. You got to pass it to Rick Fox. You got to pass it to Robert Horry. You got to feed the beast Shaq in the post when he's on a roll. You can't just be ball hogging out there. And Kobe did. He chose to listen to Phil Jackson. So the question is, how confident are we that James Harden is going to buy in? That is the real question. If you want to win a championship, you need James Harden to be bought in. Coming up, we'll have a Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg joins us for this week's conversation where we'll talk about the Phillies' rough loss last night. But did we see something positive in the game last night that we could take away from it? I think so. We'll ask Dave Weinberg about it next here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle.
The NBA Finals on ESPN Radio.
The Denver Nuggets have finally done it.
The Miami Heat become just the second 8 seed ever to make the NBA Finals.
Storming out of the conference finals, the Denver Nuggets and Miami Heat head to an epic showdown in the NBA Finals. Game 1 of the Nuggets and Heat, presented by Indeed. Coverage begins tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
Listen to the NBA Finals exclusively on 97.3 ESPN.
Hey, beach lovers, if you won the $239 million Powerball jackpot, you could buy a new vacation home in every Jersey Shore town. Anything can happen in Jersey.
Have you ever noticed that when the afternoon light hits your floors, you can see everything, including dust?
So much dust.
And that floor dust gets kicked up into the air, compromising the quality of air you and your family breathe.
Eesh.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper is the fast and easy way to clean your floors with ultra-thick pads that trap and lock dust before it gets in the air. Just a couple minutes a day.
And dust is gone.
Swiffer Heavy Duty Sweeper. Proud partner of the American Lung Association.
Homeowners trust Jenkins Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Business owners trust Jenkins, too, for light commercial services. No need to call the drain guy, the heater guy, or the plumbing guy. Call Jenkins. One call does it all. For new heating and air installation, service and maintenance, ductless air conditioning systems, water heaters, boilers, oil service, plumbing, and drain cleaning services. Call now and learn about rebates through the HVAC Energy Efficiency Program brought to you by South Jersey Gas. Call 609-641-6262 or visit jenkinsandsons.com.
Progressive Insurance protects people's cars, homes, and other vehicles. But if you've ever seen our commercials or even just heard our name, you probably already knew that. What you may not know is that we support Humble Design, a nonprofit that furnishes homes for families and veterans emerging from homelessness. Because a little help goes a long way. And a lot of help, well, you get the idea. Now, if you already knew all of this about Progressive Insurance, we're impressed. We'll have to find something else cool to tell you next time. Find out more about how we're dedicated to our customers and communities at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC. Equal housing lender. Save thousands at Matt Blatt Kia. Get out of your old trade today, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Go to mattblattkianj.com for more details. That's mattblattkianj.com.
Gotta be ya.
Matt Blatt Kia.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig. ESPN mobile app.
Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN, of course, being brought to you by Jenkins & Sons. One call does it all. You need to call the drain guy, the heater guy, or the plumbing guy because Jenkins technicians have got you covered. From new heating and air installations, service and maintenance, ductless air conditioning systems, water heaters, boilers, drain cleaning services, just call 609-641-6440. That's Jenkins. Visit them online at jenkinsandsons.com. Weinberg Wednesday is back on a Wednesday on Game Night. Last week I was filling in for Mike Gill on the Sports Bash. So Dave came on a little earlier last week, but this week we are back to our normal time here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, welcome into the final day of the month of May. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So I want to ask you about to start with the Phillies, because even though they lost the game last night, were you at least encouraged that Ranger Suarez actually looked the best that he has looked so far since coming back from that injury?
Yeah, I guess you got to take some sort of positive out of that, and if that would be it. I mean, yeah, he did look he looked pretty sharp yesterday. Offense, not so much. Still trying to understand why Bryce Harper didn't play. That makes no sense to me at all. But yeah, the good news is that Ranger did throw well. Yep.
You mentioned the Harper thing, and it is weird that they chose to not have him play on May 31st and not some other day. But I mean, couldn't I argue, just to be devil's advocate, that, whether Harper plays or not, you shouldn't score 0 runs with this offense?
Very true. Yeah, that's true. But I think Harper gives you a better chance of getting at least one. I don't know. I'm not getting it. What was he tired? I didn't hear the explanation, but
It was a scheduled day off.
Was this like load management baloney again? I mean,
I guess. I mean,
he did miss like the first month and a half.
Well, he missed the first month and change because he was recovering from an injury, though. He wasn't, missing it because he was just sitting around, twiddling his thumbs. I mean, that's the only explanation I have. Yeah.
My point being, he's well rested. I don't understand how he could be tired, especially being a DH. I mean, really. And against the Mets of all teams, I mean, you couldn't sit him against an American League team or something a couple weeks ago.
You play the Tigers next week. You just mentioned the American League team.
There you go. Perfect. I don't understand it at all. I think he might be hurt.
I don't know if he's hurt. I just think that, like you just said, it's load management. It's this idea that they're worried about overworking him. And I listen, I understand the idea that this guy is your most important player and you got to give him a day off at some point. But like you said, giving him a day off on May 30th feels like an odd time to actually do that.
Yeah, and it's against the Mets. I mean, I just don't. Division rival, big game. You want to get some momentum in the series. I don't know. It made 0 sense to me. I don't get it at all. But.
To me, the problem I have is they already had a day off on the schedule on Monday. They were actually, the whole team was off on Monday. So it's like, what is the purpose of having a scheduled day off for a guy who already had a day off? That's what I don't understand.
Right. I'm with you there. Yeah. So I guess that the Sunday game must have been really exhausting. I don't know.
I mean, for those who are wondering about the Phillies' upcoming schedule, the Phillies actually have 3 days off on their schedule next month. And then, of course, you have the All-Star break in July. And then you really don't have a crazy schedule until you get to the month of September, because they have, if I'm reading this correctly, they have 4 days off in the month of August. And then in September, they have 3 days off. So it's not like there aren't built-in days off for these guys not to play. But, what do I know? I'm just sitting behind a microphone in a studio.
There you go. Yeah, same here. Basically, yeah.
That gets to a conversation I was having before you came on, Dave, which is, one of the things that I think frustrates people the most, whether they're just regular fans or they're people like us who cover teams, is that when we all see something, right? We all have an observation. And then you have like a guy like Charles Barkley who gets up, on TNT and says the same thing the fans are saying, right? So you have the fans are saying the same thing, the former players saying the same thing, the media is saying the same thing, and everyone sees the same thing, but the people in the middle of it don't see it. I think that's what gets people frustrated, is that it's like everyone sees it, but how do you not see it?
Yeah. I guess you got to take them as, they're the people in charge. They know what they're doing. I mean, we can offer all our opinions we want, but they don't really care, I don't think. And they're still going to stick to what they know and what they think and what they believe. And, criticism be damned. They don't really, I don't think they factored it into it. I think we make a lot of sense a lot of times. Maybe we don't sometimes. I don't know. But, they're never gonna go the way of listening to the fans or anybody in terms of making decisions like that. I don't think.
Open-ended question for you. How do you feel about Rob Thompson a year into his tenure?
I think the bloom was off the rose a little bit. I think he kind of caught lightning in a bottle last year just because he wasn't Joe Girardi. Maybe the team kind of like rallied around him a little bit. I mean, I don't, and they had a great year, no question, under him. But now it seems like he's not quite as effective. I don't know if his message isn't getting across or his decision making doesn't seem as sharp. And maybe it's just the players aren't playing as well. They don't. They had a big rally in the end of the year last year. Maybe that'll happen again this year, but they seem to be, I don't know, treading water a little bit too much for the fans' liking here. And seems like he's catching a little bit of heat now. I mean, he's not the darling child anymore. So it's gonna be interesting to see how he handles that.
See, I'm in a catch-22 because on one hand, I understand the fans saying, we have to blame somebody, right, for where the team is.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like the manager or a coach can only do so much if the player's not executing.
Correct.
It's not, the manager's fault. Trey Turner might swing at a ball 3 feet off the plate, or Kyle Schwarber is swinging at a bad pitch, or Aaron Nola is being an idiot and throwing a fastball 90 miles an hour right down the middle of a plate and gets smashed out of the ballpark. Like, at some point, where do we draw the line between the players doing their job and the manager doing his job?
Yeah, I'm with you there. It ultimately comes down to the players performing. I mean, you can fiddle with lineups, you can change things around all you want, but like you said, if Aaron Nola's not playing up to his potential, or Bryce Harper, or whoever, then Kyle Schwarber's hitting 160 something now. I mean, it's just there's no way to combat that. And I thought Thompson erred a little bit earlier in the year with his lineup. I didn't quite getting Schwarber, his insistence on Schwarber batting leadoff the whole time. But in the end, though, baseball is played by the players, and they're the ones that have to execute, whether it's hitting, fielding, pitching, whatever.
It's so confusing, though, that how does Schwarber have a higher on base percentage than Trey Turner, but he has a horrible batting average? Like, I don't understand how these numbers even happen. It's part of the reason why, for me, Dave, as I get older, I get tired and more of analytics. I'm just like, at some point, these numbers just don't add up.
It's funny you say that, because I was watching the game yesterday, and I was at a local establishment with some friends, and some like bizarre metric came on the screen, and I'm like, what in the world does that have to do with anything? I'm 65. I know I'm an old school guy, and I just want average RBIs and home runs. I want wins and losses, pitching, ERA. I don't care about WAR. I don't care about exit velocity. I don't care about whatever ridiculous statistics they can come up with. I mean, just to justify having a job, I guess. I don't know. I just don't. It seems. I'm sorry to vent, but it's way out of hand to me, especially with baseball.
God. Just to justify why they have a job. That's the line of the day right there.
Sorry.
That's Dave Weinberg here on Weinberg Wednesday here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. You can vent to him at Weinberg19 on Twitter.
Right. Yeah. Feel free.
Yeah. Dave, speaking of venting, obviously a lot of people have something to say about the Sixers, and they decided not to hire Frank Vogel. They are going with Nick Nurse. So I want to get your perspective, because you were one of the people who was very vocal about Frank Vogel being the guy. So are you okay with Nick Nurse getting the job?
Oh yeah, I mean, they seem to think that they found their guy, and it seems like from a national perspective, people seem to be on board with it. If it was me, I would have picked Frank Vogel. Although, I mean, I don't understand why you wouldn't. But again, with my buddies out at this local establishment last night, and I said, I can't believe they didn't hire Frank Vogel. And the guy next to me says, well, what has he ever won? I'm like, well, try an NBA championship, you moron.
So what did he win? Like, do you watch sports, bro? Like,
seriously. And it's almost like it was 1950. It's just a couple of years ago,
Right.
And yeah, I just, like, we've often talked about in the last couple of weeks about how I just think he was the perfect fit in terms of understanding how to deal with egos, managing the game, managing superstars, understanding the culture of Philadelphia. I just thought that was, I mean, it was a logical choice, but evidently they felt differently.
Well, do you buy anything into, or do you just give a shoulder shrug to the idea that Nick Nurse met with Joel Embiid before the Sixers hired him, and that Embiid gave his blessing after meeting with Nurse?
I guess. I mean, what do you need? You need Embiid's permission to hire a coach? Is that?
Well, it's weird because Morey said at his press conference that he's not going to ask the players what they think. But then the Sixers went and had Nurse meet with Embiid, and then after Embiid gave his blessing, they hired him. So it's like, well, which is it? Did you not care what the players think, or did you care what the players think?
Right, and why did you have Frank Vogel meet with Embiid? I don't know. I mean, why?
Apparently not.
Why just Nick Nurse then? I don't get that. I mean, I guess Embiid is the franchise, so I guess you need his blessing. But I don't know. I don't necessarily think that should be your ultimate factor in making a decision like that, whether Embiid improves or not. That doesn't make any sense to me. But hopefully Nick Nurse will be the answer for them. Hopefully he'll be able to turn it around. I have my doubts, but we'll see.
How much do you think a guy like him can turn a team around if James Harden is back here, though? Like, do you think that James Harden can be more with a guy like Nick Nurse? Because I personally think you can never win a championship with James Harden on your team.
Why is that?
Well, I think you saw in game 6 and 7 that he's a tunnel-minded individual who has the inability to pivot and adjust in the middle of a game and realize that, oh man, I haven't given Joel Embiid the ball for 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute on the clock. Or, hey, I'm like 4 for 12 shooting. Maybe I should try to pass it for once, or, hey, they're not calling the fouls I like, so I got to stop trying to get fouled. Like, it's the idea that, the best players in the game realize when the game is not going their way, they adjust, they pivot, they do something else. And I feel like Harden doesn't have that mental flexibility.
Okay. I'm kind of torn on him. I mean, he was like sensational in a couple of his playoff games that he single-handedly carried them into a couple wins. And that James Harden certainly can win a championship. But like you said, there's the other James Harden who disappears, who doesn't adjust, who isn't flexible enough to understand, how to adjust his game to fit the needs of the team in a certain situation. And it's frustrating. I don't know that if Doc Rivers couldn't get that out of him, what makes you think Nick Nurse can? I don't know if any coach can, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of my thing. Like, I think people have this idea in their mind that, like, oh, you gotta just change the coach and the players will automatically listen. And it's like, it doesn't work like that. Like, I mean,
no.
This is Philadelphia. Did you already forget what happened with Chip Kelly? Like, come on.
Right. Yeah, it's not, doesn't work that way. You're right. The coach can't come in and insert his culture. I think he's got to maybe just adjust to the players more so than the players have to adjust to the coach, particularly in basketball. I mean, I think that the players pretty much run the show. When you get down to it, I think a coach's influence is pretty minimal unless you're an all-star, all-time coach like I don't know, Larry Brown or Stu Jackson or somebody like that. I mean, I don't know that the coaches are really that much of a difference. I think it ultimately comes down to Embiid and what he can do and how they build the team around him.
Speaking of football, I was on with Dave Weinberg for a Weinberg Wednesday here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, you've covered a lot of Eagles off seasons in your past. How do you feel about this Eagles team having the fewest workout days of the off season of any team in the NFL?
I don't have a problem with it, honestly. I mean, it seems like that's been trending in their direction ever since Doug Peterson was there. Really, they kind of they tend to tone back things, scale back things. Where Chip Kelly was all full bore. I'm sorry, been all 100 miles an hour every day, and
right.
It seems like the game's a little different now. Where the players really. I don't want to say you don't accomplish anything in the off season, but it's really more about just learning the system, learning your teammates, getting to know everything, getting comfortable, more so than impressing anyone as far as your offensive and defensive abilities. That all comes during training camp and the preseason, I think. So yeah, I mean, I have no problem with them like scaling things back. I think that might be a good move to avoid injuries and stuff like that.
I mean, my position is that, we just talked about the players got to do their job, right? Well, if the players are buying into this idea of having less days, because Nick Sirianni said, look, I'll make the days less if you all show up. And they basically said, deal. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't care how many days it is, as long as all the players are there, because you got a brand new defensive coordinator, a quarterback coach you're promoting to an offensive coordinator. I don't care if it's 6 days, 10 days, or 4 days. Like, I want everyone here so everyone's in the building and starting to get acclimated to these things.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. It is very important for, I noticed like Fletcher Cox attended, which he doesn't usually do, or at least to that degree. And yeah, it's important. Like you said, you have a new defensive coordinator. You want to get to know him. You want to get comfortable with him. You want to get familiar with his system. Like I said, not so much on the field, but in the classroom. Just, just learning what your responsibilities are going to be and that kind of thing. That makes, it makes a lot of sense to be there even though they're voluntary, you probably should be there. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, especially, by the way, Jason Kelsey, he's got to learn how to play next to a new guy on the offensive line. Like, I know you're not going full pad smashing each other in the OTAs, but I mean, just the idea of learning, okay, I got a new guy next to me. Like, I want these guys out there and learning. And I don't see the value in having an off season where guys are not showing up, like with some of these teams, like the whole fiasco going on right now with a team like the Cowboys. Like, well, some of the guys are here and some of the guys are not. It's like, well, that's not a team that's going to have success to me, because you're not all in it together.
Yeah, unless you're a veteran team and you didn't make very many off-season changes. Your coaching staff was intact. Your lineup is pretty much intact. Then I could probably understand it. But and that, for the most part, you should have everybody there just to get some bonding going, to form some chemistry for the upcoming season.
Dave, before I let you go, for a lot of us who live down here, we know Memorial Day weekend is the unofficial start of the summer season. So how was your first weekend of the 2023 summer season?
Very relaxing. Yeah. Cape May, where I live, it was packed, jam-packed with people. And I'm in the minority, but I welcome them. I enjoy it. I think the more the merrier. I mean, when you sit in February and the street lights are off and it's bitter cold and you're driving down an empty road, I'll take the crowds anytime. Granted, it's tough to find a parking space. I understand, and traffic can be a problem and people can be rude, but I for one just don't mind it that much. I just kind of go with the flow. Took my first dip in the ocean of the year on Monday. A little chilly, but it's still pretty refreshing. It's yeah, well.
Dave, I had to throw on a hoodie on Saturday night. I was at a barbecue and I was like, it's just cold out here. Like, I had to go to my car and grab my hooded sweatshirt and put it on. Like, my only complaint about the weekend was, I think this is like the coldest Memorial Day weekend I can remember in, I don't know, maybe like 15 years or like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's been really chilly, especially like in the late or early evening. Yeah, I'm with you. But I put a sweatshirt on a couple times. It's yeah, I'm used to sitting on the beach over the weekend. I didn't get to do that because it was way too windy for one thing, and too cold. And my wife and I were just commenting about it, how the beaches seemed really crowded and we didn't quite get it. We would never have gone. And they're like, well, if that's all you have, you don't have next weekend to go like we do, or to the next day. So, we can pick and choose where they have to just take what they can get. So, I can understand that.
I mean, I remember I saw people started coming down here Thursday night. So, I mean, I knew it was going to be a busy weekend. Like I said, my surprise was just the weather, that it was, the nights are still like, I mean, I'm wearing pants yesterday and today. I had to put the shorts away for a couple days because it's getting so chilly right now.
No, I'm kind of old school where I'll wear shorts. I don't care if it's May 31st. I'm putting shorts on. I don't care if it's 10 degrees. I'm wearing shorts.
That means you're a true South Jersey, and you're
I
a
guess.
true you're a true local. I was never fully indoctrinated to that concept. I've always been the person where it says, it's a little cold out here. I'm gonna put a hoodie on. I'm gonna put some jeans on. But
Well, you're more sensible than I am, I guess.
He's Dave Weinberg. Give him a follow on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19 and Extra Point Columns over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Dave, appreciate you jumping on today. Hopefully the weather warms up for you in the next few days so you can put those hoodies away, okay?
I hope so. Thanks, Josh, as always. I appreciate it.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN. We'll get back to you guys' thoughts and comments on the other side. I see Mike in Marmora. I see Jeff in Ocean City. I'll get to your guys' messages and more. 609-403-0973 is the text board, and your DMs in the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle.
Here's what you missed on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max.
Back in the day, I was a casino manager, and Mr. Johnson came in one night. And he was wearing his own football jersey.
Hey, what team was
it?
this?
Jet. It was 1999. We just thought it was odd that you were wearing your own jersey.
He really got me out there looking like a lame. Man, please, Dave, stop it.
Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. Weekday mornings at 6 on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Matt Flat Nissan is now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Get out of that old car, truck, or SUV and into a brand new Nissan. The all-new Matt Flat Nissan on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, or visit us online, mattflatnissan.com.
Homeowners trust Jenkins Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Business owners trust Jenkins, too, for light commercial services. No need to call the drain guy, the heater guy, or the plumbing guy. Call Jenkins. One call does it all. For new heating and air installation, service and maintenance, ductless air conditioning systems, water heaters, boilers, oil service, plumbing, and drain cleaning services. Call now and learn about rebates through the HVAC Energy Efficiency Program, brought to you by South Jersey Gas. Call 609-641-6262 or visit jenkinsandsons.com.
The Dell Technologies Summer Sale event is on with limited quantity deals on top tech. Save on select PCs powered by the latest Intel Core processors like Thin and Light XPS 13 laptops, Inspiron laptops, and 2-in-1s. Plus, get savings on select accessories, free shipping, and monthly payment options with Dell Preferred Account. It's the perfect season to power your passions during Dell's Summer Sale event. Save today by calling 877-ASK-DELL. That's 877-ASK-DELL. Offered to U.S. residents by WebBank, who determines qualifications for and terms of credit.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot, but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Sail into summer in New Jersey. Stroll boardwalks or soar high on the rides. Enjoy iconic shores, history, and culture, from dazzling cities to charming countryside. Find it all at visitnj.org.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
As promised, we'll get to you guys' thoughts and comments now. 609-403-0973. That is the text board. Or you get priority DM messaging into the show thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. A couple things before we get to Mike from Marmora. He's the first message I want to get to coming up here. But, one of the things we were talking about with Dave about with the Phillies is that the players got to do their job. And I don't hear enough fans blaming the players as much as they should at times. I'm not saying you got to rip the players, be hypercritical of them or eviscerate them or anything like that. But I think that there are times that they blame the coach or they blame the manager in baseball. They blame the head coach in basketball or football or hockey, because they're not thinking. They're just they want to blame somebody, and they assume that it's the coach. The coach didn't do something. And I just wish people would be a little less lazy, because what happens is that when you do actually need to blame the coach for something, right? When there is something to point out the blame about what the coach is doing, then what happens is that it gets drowned out by all the people who always complain about the coach. I always go back to when John Gannon didn't make the right adjustments in the biggest game of the year. That was my problem with Gannon. It wasn't how much you blitzed. How much you blitz has no direct correlation on winning and losing. It's when you blitz. It's how you blitz. It's when you make the play call. It's not how many times you called it. That would be like saying a pitcher didn't get enough strikeouts because he didn't throw the fastball enough. Like it's silliness like that I don't understand why people are so quick to not think before they speak at times about some of these issues. When Gannon has a bad day, week 1 of the NFL season, for me, I say, hey, I saw some issues. They got to adjust to it. And as long as they make the adjustments, I'm okay. And then you see the Cardinals game where they did make adjustments. They were better defensively. Later in the season, when they were bad against Washington, guess what? They made adjustments. They got better after the Washington game. Because remember, we were all talking about here on 97.3 ESPN that, hey, you got to play the Titans. You got to play the Giants. You got to play the Cowboys. These are all great running teams. How are you going to stop them? And for the most part, the defense tightened up. They got better. Now, part of it was Howie Roseman added Linval Joseph and Dominican Sue off of their couches, but still Gannon had to insert them into the lineup properly and get them to work. So, Gannon was not a bad coach. Was he someone who didn't understand the Philadelphia culture? Was he someone who didn't, really identify with a rabid fan base? Was he someone who was a little bit of an aloof individual when he spoke at times? Yes, to all the above. But when it was time to criticize Gannon for him actually doing something that was wrong, it got drowned out by all the people who always complain about the coach. And I think that's where it frustrates me as a sports fan, not a person behind a microphone. It's as a sports fan. Like I said, I told Dave Weinberg, I told you guys multiple times, when I see something and you see something and we're all sitting around having a drink, eating something together, hanging out with friends and family, and everybody sees the same thing, and then the players and coaches don't see it, you're like, what's wrong here? Like when Charles Barkley said this the other day on TNT, the Celtics are not making their threes. And Barkley says this. I mean, this resonated with me.
But I got to say something, man. Watching you dumbass Celtics making my head hurt. Ernie, let me tell you something.
Glad I asked you about Jimmy Butler.
I know, but I can't let it go, man.
I know.
If you just come to the game and say, we're just going to jack up threes, and if we win, we're going to win. If we miss them, we're going to lose. They're 4 for 21. They probably, I forget what they were last game.
7 for 35.
I mean, it's so bad to watch them play. There's no ball movement. There's no body movement. And it's just frustrating watching a team with this much talent just play stupid.
He said it, play stupid. Why are we okay with the players playing stupid? But then we're going to blame the coach when the players play stupid. These are grown men. They'll do whatever the heck they want. I mean, come on. Don't you all remember Latrell Sprewell choking PJ Carlesimo back in the late 90s? These are grown men. They're going to do whatever they want. They're not going to, Doc Rivers is screaming at the guys on the sideline. We got to be tighter. We got to make better decisions. And then the very next play, Joel Embiid turns the ball over. It's not Doc Rivers' fault. At some point, sports fans, all sports fans, have to accept the reality that sometimes you got to blame the player before you blame the coach. All right, over on the text board, 609-403-0973. Mike and Maramora brought up an interesting point. Even though I don't agree with it, it's an interesting thought from Mike and Maramora. He says, Josh, I think Morey might be the problem for the Sixers. I'm probably alone thinking that, but I think he's more about himself than the team at times. A little bit like Jerry Jones. I think Morey is constantly trying to prove that he knows more than everyone. And I don't think he'll be here very long. That's Mike and Maramora. So the second part of what you said there about Morey trying to prove that he knows a lot and he might not be here for long. Listen, I don't know what Morey's long-term goals are because he says that he wants to win a championship in the media and on social media, and he's very invested in the Sixers organization. So I don't think that he is just going to be here for 2 years and he's gone necessarily. And I don't know if Morey's the problem necessarily either, but I do think that Morey doesn't make every decision perfectly. You know, for every Al Horford decision, right? For every, hey, I got rid of Ben Simmons and I got a former league MVP in return for him, there are still criticisms to be made for the fact that he has unloaded so many draft picks in his efforts to clean up the disaster handed to him by his predecessors, that you could argue that now he's running out of ammunition to do what needs to be done. And your only hope is that you can get creative this offseason, because when the Tobias Harris and other contracts come off the books next offseason, then you're probably in a position to make some big changes, make some big additions, because the 2024 draft class is much better. But Mike and Maramora, even though I don't agree with you that Morey is the problem, I think that Morey can become the problem if he fails to do the job this offseason. I don't think he's more about himself than the team, but I do think there is a part of him that is so hyper confident that he believes that he knows best. And I think because of that confidence, he is able to orchestrate his business in a way on the job that may come off as a little bit of out of touch and aloof. But I think part of that is also because, and I said this before, I just don't think Morey is the greatest public speaker. I think that when he is on a podium by himself and he has all the attention and focus on him, I think he's not as equipped to handle some of those questions that come in. Whereas if there are two people on a podium, like him and a head coach, or him and the owner, Josh Harris, or whatever combination you want to come up with, him and Elton Brand or whatever, there's less opportunities for him to be able to deflect to somebody else, be able to, redirect some of those questions. So I don't think he's necessarily a know-it-all, but I do think that his awkwardness combined with his self-confidence in himself, both of those elements together do have a tendency to come off as a bit of a know-it-all. So I understand where you're coming from, Mike and Maramora, but I don't think Morey is the problem necessarily. Now, if you want to say that Morey's infatuation and deep relationship with James Harden is a problem, I'm with you on that. By the way, Jeff in Ocean City believes the Phillies will win tonight. To the point where Jeff in Ocean City literally placed a bet that the Phillies will win the game tonight. Jeff in Ocean City, I hope you're right. Not because I think the Phillies are plummeting and they're completely doomed. I just think that, as I told you guys before we started the Braves series, I told you guys last week, you got to win 2 out of 4 against the Braves. And then you got to win the series with the Mets, win the series with the Nationals. You can't win the series with the Mets if you don't win the game tonight. Aaron Nola takes the mound for the Phils tonight. And they got a day game tomorrow. So tomorrow on Game Night, we'll be recapping the Phillies-Mets game. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great night, everybody.
This weekend on ESPN Radio, interleague rivals go head-to-head at Dodger Stadium.
Judge swinging, drive, deep left field, way out of here.
Aaron Judge and the New York Yankees continue a West Coast trip in Los Angeles, where they'll face Freddie Freeman and the Dodgers.
Freeman, center field, out of here.
The New York Yankees at the Los Angeles Dodgers. Coverage begins Saturday at 6:30 Eastern.
Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN.